This episode of the Managing Madrid podcast is brought to you by Hilton Charlotte Uptown Hotel, which is linked to the Charlotte Convention Center via an outdoor pedestrian walkway. Discover motoring history at the NASCAR Hall of Fame 3 blocks away and take in big events at Bank of America Stadium, Trust Field, and Spectrum Center, all under a mile from the door. Perks include free access to the connected YMCA. Listeners, when you're in Charlotte for Real Madrid's preseason tour this summer, make sure to book your stay at Hilton Charlotte Uptown Hotel. Coming up is another members-only clip. This one is from a podcast that was with Eduardo Alvarez, beloved Eduardo, a Managing Madrid favorite. Try to sneak him on here as much as we can. And anytime Eduardo is on, we bounce back basically throughout Real Madrid history and draw parallels to present day. And in the entire podcast, we also spoke about Xavi and Laporta, that mess, Spain's squad, notable omissions, the greatness of Manolo Sanchis, one of my personal favorites. I wish I was actually a little bit older so I could have seen him play live, but I did catch up on him later on and caught the tail end of his career. Also, Borussia Dortmund, that was kind of the main purpose of the podcast. Is Real Madrid being the favorite in that game actually a dangerous thing, and why? Ton more. Full episode is linked in the show notes. You can also go over to patreon.com/managingmadrid or subscribe on the YouTube members section of the YouTube channel, depending on where you're listening or where you're watching this. And this particular clip is about Toni Kroos. Has there ever been anything like the tribute we saw in Real Madrid history? And what are the closest examples that we have? Enjoy it. Let's get to it. There were so many things that happened in the Real Madrid universe in the past few weeks that I've wanted to talk to you about. And I guess we can start in kind of reverse chronological order with the whole Toni Kroos tribute against Real Betis. I wanted to ask you this, because you've been a fan longer than I have. Have you ever seen anything like that in your life?
No.
At the Bernabeu? No. Not even Zidane's last game?
No, I don't think so. This was beautiful from beginning to end. Other farewells have been... I remember a match for Butragueño after he had already retired, and they played a match off-season. And it was fantastic, and Hugo Sanchez came back, and all the Quinta del Buitre were together, etc. That was great, but it wasn't the farewell when he was at the club. Actually, Butragueño's last year at Real Madrid was extremely painful to watch for all the Butragueño fans. It was bad. He was slow. The Bernabeu was extremely impatient with him. It was so they had to do something special for Butragueño after the season had ended. But this was perfectly planned by Kroos, right? Last game of the season, home game, no need to win. There's no pressure, and they played. For 80 minutes they played the starting lineup, most of it. So they didn't take the match for granted. But then, last 10 minutes, let's relax. And it was fantastic. It was beautiful, really beautiful farewell.
Which question should I ask next based on that? Were you at the Zidane last game?
I was, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you
it was moving.
it?
Don't get me wrong. It was moving.
Yeah.
It was. You could tell that he was a Bernabeu's favorite, probably even more than Kroos. Obviously, more than Kroos. And Kroos has left in such a high, because last season, this has not been discussed very much, or at least I haven't read about it, but last season when we lost 4-0 to City, we all were discussing this is the end of an era, and Kroos and Modric cannot play together anymore. Neither of them can keep up with an extremely athletic midfield like City's is, or like 3 other top teams in Europe have. But his comeback this season has been tremendous. I mean, no one expected him to be this fit, and obviously he's not the Kroos that he was when he was 25 or 26, but he's been terrific. And Ancelotti dosing his minutes and leaving him play for an hour, 70 minutes, and then Modric comes in. He found a formula that was working very, very well for us. So even at the beginning of the season, I thought this was his last season. By mid-season, I was thinking he may stay. And 3 weeks ago, I wasn't even thinking that he was not going to extend the contract for another year. It was like, come on, how are you going to leave now? And when he announced it, he caught everyone by surprise. And this is one of the things that tells you that the media and the players are as far away from each other as they have ever been. No one knew that Kroos was going to leave. No one. No one gave. I mean, he gave the news to a German newspaper. I mean, he wrote a letter to a German newspaper. This is unheard of in the era of social networks and immediate information. He caught everyone by surprise. It's fantastic, and it tells you the kind of player he is. Right? He things happen on his own terms. He's not showing off or sharing information just because. And he had a plan, and this is a fantastic way to live. And but you asked me about Zidane, and Zidane Kroos has let's say a rational connection. We know that we play better with Kroos on the team, and we love how he makes the team go forward and he organizes us when we need to defend. But Zidane was something more emotional. Zidane was something intangible. I can talk about for hours about Kroos, 90% plus pass completion. I cannot give you many stats from Zidane, and that's why there was a probably a bigger emotional component on Zidane's farewell, but this was a lot better planned. The whole match from the beginning, when Betis and Real Madrid made the guard of honor when he jumped onto the pitch, everything was beautiful. Really, really well.
It's interesting that you mentioned the 4-0 loss to City last season, because funny enough, and I know it's very difficult to remember this now because we have zero good memories from that game, but Kroos was actually one of the few players who actually had a decent game. He was fighting in that game. And yep. I think when you reflect on, we all came to this conclusion, okay, Kroos and Modric can't play together in these games. Like, it's maybe random games in La Liga if you have to, but against the best team in the world, away from home, you need something different, a different look. You need, people who can track, who can defend, who can just play differently. But what's funny is that this season was the first season where Ancelotti truly consistently separated the two from each other in the lineup, and it worked. If you think back, like even at the Etihad this season, but it happened a lot this season, Kroos plays brilliantly at the Etihad. Modric comes in for Kroos at the Etihad and picks up right where Kroos left off and is brilliant in Kroos's departure off the field. And that combination worked really well. And I was thinking, like, how special that is. The two best midfielders in the club's history, in my opinion, depending on where you classify D7. But you get what I mean. Now all of a sudden are just coming in for each other. What a luxury to have, This season was very special for that reason, and we didn't really fully know it at the time that Kroos was going to leave. Now we know, but it was incredibly special to see that happen, and Modric taking a backseat. And now Modric becomes really important next season because we have no one who can really do what Kroos does in the team moving forward. Modric is probably the closest one in terms of not necessarily just playing style, but in terms of the composure, the level-headedness, the cold blood. Modric is probably the best now at that, even at his age. But I wanted to ask you this. Do you feel like the air is at the club is different now? I don't know what it is, but we had Kroos retire here. We don't always get to see our legends retire here. It's rare. Modric is saying now, I am going to retire here. You have Rodrigo coming out, who's so young. He's like, I'm going to retire here. Ancelotti is saying, this is my last stop. I'm going to retire here. Do you feel like, I feel like players of maybe 15, 20 years ago, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, they could say those things, but the club wouldn't necessarily agree with it. They might push them out. I don't know. But I just feel like now we're at a stage, maybe things have changed. We give them the option to leave when they want to leave on their terms.
I'm not sure we can draw. I'm not sure we can draw a conclusion about this. I mean, obviously, players can retire later now and preserve their fitness for longer, even though football is a lot more physical than it used to be. But Modric takes amazing care of himself. I'm not sure. I probably told this story before, but Rodrigo always comes in, and Modric is taking massages before and after training, and Rodrigo just makes fun of him. It's like, you're always getting massages with, and Modric says, I could be your father, and obviously, he's the age of Rodrigo's father, in fact. So he's taking an amazing care of his body, but he will become 39 in September. It's shocking that a player of that age is still playing top level football at Real Madrid, no less. I don't think it's a trend. I think the conditions now, in terms of the club and the coach, give some extra room. I mean, Kroos was unexpected, and Modric is benefiting from better means for him to preserve his fitness, and also the fact that he's accepted a lesser role in which playing half an hour when the other team is a bit more tired is fine for him, and this is really good. But I don't think, I mean, these love promises have happened in the past, and I mean, Raúl wanted to retire as a Real Madrid player. Then things happen, and that the idea doesn't really happen. But I think there are better conditions now, but I'm not sure this is going to end up in a trend where Real Madrid players retire with the white shirt. I wouldn't expect so. The level of the demands of the Bernabeu are very, very high, and whenever you lose a step, the Bernabeu catches up that very quickly.
Yes, I guess it helps that Kroos was playing at this level, and it's going to help that Modric is playing at this level at this age, where in Raúl's case, that wasn't the case. And I wasn't around for Butragueño era, but from what you're describing, it wasn't necessarily the case for Butragueño either, right? I mean, he was being phased out by Raúl at that point. But maybe it's this. Maybe since I've started watching the team in '98, there's far less drama now than there was in years past. There's far less polémicas. There's far less distractions, and I'm talking about like very recent history. Like really, I think from Zidane on, it's been calmer, and I think it probably has a lot to do with the demeanor of Zidane and Carlo. But like someone like Nacho, I think is going to be given the option. Like it's going to be up to him, right? So you don't see players getting pushed out as much. I don't think. I guess the biggest example.
Well, remember Ramos. Remember Ramos, no.
Ramos was recent, yeah.
Your offer expired. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You should have said yes a few months ago.
Yeah, and that was 3 years ago only. So
we've been ruthless more than once recently, but the fact is that the coaches have been of a lower profile. I mean, we don't give a lot of news other than Mbappe's saga. We don't give a lot of news cycles for free. I have I'm on a WhatsApp group with the correspondent of Sport, the Catalan newspaper here, and we debate Barcelona for 80%, 85% of for exchanges, because there's really not that much to talk about Real Madrid, and Barcelona is an endless source of semi-news and reasons to make fun of the other. And I mean, it's great that we're in such a calm period, and that allows for players to consider their options with more time, and if they decide to leave, it's fine too.
Do you wish all of your favorite legends of the past had the Kroos mindset of like,
No,
I know,
no.
like it's like me personally, if Raul had just retired in 2003, I would be like, man, this is such a great, like, you just closed it at the perfect time, but we didn't know it was, it was going to go downhill from there.
That's the thing, you didn't know. And some of them have one extra year that is fantastic,
Yeah.
And this made Kroos farewell more special, because almost no one makes that decision. I mean, it's mind-boggling that after one of the best seasons he's had, he decides to go. I mean, and I know he didn't want to be retired by football, but to leave while he was still up. But this is extreme, because again, this is top 3 season of Kroos playing for Real Madrid, probably.
Yes, that 100% minimum. I think he's been.
It's a bit of an exaggeration, if you ask me, but that was his choice.
His defense randomly went up a level. Like, it's not normal for a player who gets older to get better defensively and to start running more. That happened this year somehow with him.
Yeah.
And that was something that we didn't always, like, I remember during the pandemic, the Chelsea elimination, one of the narratives was he cannot run, like he's not tracking. And I think he's improved on that. And I think that's why you have to factor in as one of the best seasons.
There's one thing, I was watching highlights of Champions League finals with my son this week. And the first goal we scored against Juventus in Cardiff, and that's 2017, he broke a line. And he didn't break a line by that control that he does, that first touch that he does that kills a defender. He just got the ball and overrun a midfielder from the other team, and then the ball went to Cristiano, Carvajal, and Cristiano scored. That he hasn't done that in 5 years. And even though he's back with some of the defensive strength that he used to have, you can still see that he's not the Kroos but he's been able to master the game in a different way. It's like when Cristiano lost that extra speed, he became a center forward and he started scoring right, left, and center. And we never saw Cristiano again on the wing, but that was fine because he was scoring nonstop. And this is something that great players know how to do. They tweak the way they play, and they end up being able to play longer, even if it's in a different capacity. And that's in this case, he did recover some of his defensive, some of the way he covered the pitch before that. He lost that. Obviously, he did it.
Kroos at the Euros this summer. You support Spain, correct? Like that's a fair assumption.
Of course. Okay. Who would I support?
I figured as much. I was 98% sure that was the case. But that aside, because Spain is your number one choice, if you had to choose between Bellingham winning the Euros or Kroos winning the Euros, or like the whole French contingent of Mendy, Chouameni, Camavinga, Mbappe.
This is really tough, Kiyan, because I don't see this on a club lens. I have my own allegiances country-wise. Most of my fellow Madridistas look at it that way. But the fact is, I cannot root for France. I mean, if you pay me $1 million, I wouldn't be rooting for France. It's completely against my own. Even if I love Camavinga and I would love him to be a star player in the Euros, but I don't want France to win. I don't want Italy to win. It takes me a bit of an effort to think of England as a favorite of mine if Spain get eliminated. I mean, it's really tough. It's like asking you to see, well, if Real Madrid is not in the Champions League, are you rooting for Barcelona because some Real Madrid player is now playing for Barcelona? It doesn't work that way.
No,
I would say then when Spain are eliminated, they will, because it's a solid team, but they lack talent, and you need talent for such a short tournament. I'm just gonna enjoy the matches, and root would be a strong word, but I'll just look at how everyone's playing, and then I'll pick a favorite follow for the rest of the tournament. But again, some of the teams, their rivalry is too big to root for them.
Look, that's interesting. I'm just so supportive of any Real Madrid player in the tournament. Like Sid and I were discussing this yesterday, like from a pure Real Madrid perspective, because obviously a lot of Madridistas are not from Spain, right? Myself included. So we don't have the same allegiance as someone like you has, or Madridistas in Spain. So we were thinking, like, you know what?
But there's Madridistas in Spain who detest the national team because they think it's a nuisance and that it takes focus, and or players get injured, or they're not selected when they deserve to be selected. So it's not that's not the case for most Madridistas from Spain. There's a decent. I would say there's a huge correlation between being a Mourinhista and not rooting for Spain in being a Spaniard, because back when Mourinho was with Real Madrid, there was this, and we had this extremely charged clásicos against Barcelona. Casillas tried to reduce the number of the level of noise so that it didn't impact on the national team, because we had an extremely successful national team back then. And Casillas reached out to Xavi to say, listen, I mean, this is stupid. And this was, to Mourinho, this was betrayal of the highest order. And to all the Mourinhistas, this was also betrayal of the highest order. And since then, there's some kind of divorce between the national team and some Madridistas and the national team, especially when there's not many Madridistas called up. And this is one of the instances.
This particular era, I think Madridistas are not fond of, for sure. And it's funny because I actually was a huge Spain supporter growing up, even though I didn't have that's partly because I love Raúl so much. And that's why Raúl's miss against France in Euro 2000 was something that I never got over. I was so heartbroken over it. But over the years, I just kind of got more desensitized to it. And I just started supporting the Real Madrid players, in part because for my own selfish reasons, Eduardo, I like to debate a lot about player legacies, like Kroos versus Xavi, for example. And I'm like, if Kroos wins the Euros after coming back to the German national team after all this time, that's great for all the arguments I have in my tool belt to bring out. So I think about it that way. I also think about Jude Bellingham and potential Ballon d'Or stakes. If he wins the Euros, that's good for him. I want to see as many Real Madrid players on the podium at the end of the year. I'm thinking of it that way, I suppose. But Sid and I were saying, from a Real Madrid standpoint, if you don't support Spain, it's really hard to lose in the Euros, because probably one of our players is going to win.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So it's good.
We have England, Germany, France. I mean, it's pretty well spread out.
Yeah, it's pretty well spread out. Spain
among the favorites. Yes.
Yeah, among the favorites. Yeah.